Howdy, boys and girls. I better start learning some Texas, phrases, right? Like howdy and partner, because I'm going to Texas next Tuesday, and it's getting really cold here in Canada. It's +6 or 43 degrees, and that's why I'm wearing this, like a basically warm thing, warm coat. And that was not enough, so I had to put this on. And I'm staying at a hotel, and I'm doing my end of the quarter paperwork, like IFTA and New York Fuel and Kentucky. And each time it gets easier and easier. So just now it's not like, I remember first time I did IFTA, it was really stressful, but now it just I add all my kilometers on one sheet, then I add all my fuel purchases, and now I create a spreadsheet in my computer, print it out, and send it to them. So I'm gonna do it over this weekend. So today's Thursday. Over this weekend, I'm gonna finish all this, send it out, and be done with it. And Monday, I try to find a short load, because it's funny how this happened. I worked for this broker before, moved some loads for this particular freight broker, and he just sent me an email out of the blue saying that he has this machine going to Texas, and would I give him a quote. And as I mentioned before, you don't want to, like when working with brokers on a quote, right? You don't want to quote too low, but you also don't want to quote too high and scare the guy away, And I came up with a number, sent it to him, and he says, "Oh, I was looking for this." And basically my rate was off by $200. Like his rate was, he wanted to pay $200 less than what I wanted. And I said, "Hey, that's fine, I'm okay with that rate." And so we shook on it, so to speak, in the virtual world, and he sent me the rate confirmation. I don't have the address yet, but I have the confirmation. I guess he's gonna send me like a dispatch sheet with the address, probably Monday. And yeah, it goes to the very bottom of Texas, just south of San Antonio. So look forward to that trip. I'm gonna get out of this 43F weather plus 6C. It's really, and I got a cold as usually. I got some slight running nose problem, because always happens to me in the spring and fall. And I know everybody says that it's a virus, but somehow that virus is okay, doing fine, not showing itself. But as soon as I open the window, and that's what happened, I was driving the Challenger, and the sun was shining, the temperature was like +20 or 70 F, but the wind is still already cold, and I was just driving through town, and I opened the window just to hear to my perfect now exhaust. Love this Flowmaster Super 44. Sounds amazing. The car pulls much better than before. It's like awesome, And I opened the window, and right on the next day I noticed I was, I had some issues with my nose. And so I don't think it's the virus, it's like the cold temperature and the wind. That's what, I don't know, affects me. Somehow it awakens that virus that we all have inside. Anyway, so I look forward to getting out of this tundra over here. And I was thinking about doing some maintenance on the truck, and like I'm always complaining, right, when I have to disconnect from the trailer, because it's a lot of work. All those hoses are very heavy, the PTO hoses. And somebody told me that, why don't I install quick disconnect on the truck? So instead of disconnecting the hoses from the trailer, and then they're like, I don't know, 15 feet long, and you have to wrap them around the tank in the back there. And this way, if I disconnect them on the truck, I can just throw them back on the trailer, right? And then it's much easier. And so that was one thing I was thinking about. Then another thing was the tires. I got the truck in February 2018, and now I have 140,000 kilometers, which is like 90,000 miles on it. And I think I should, rotate the tires in the back, even though now I don't notice any irregular wear and tear, but everything wears out great. And I have Bridgestone 24/5 with the big, with the big tread there. Love those tires. But now I wanna, rotate them, but I got those plastic fenders, right? So I call Cal Tire here. I said, you guys have the tools, right? You can remove the fenders and then put them back on. And they knew right away what I was talking about, and I knew that they would say this. And she says, no, we don't do the fenders. I said, what, you don't have the tools? No. And so I called Kenworth, and the lady on the phone, I explained to her how I ran into this issue with the tire shop. And she says, really? That, she says, takes like 10 seconds to disconnect those fenders. So I don't know. I said, can you guys do it? Just, since you installed it, I know they're expensive, Kenworth, like by the hour, the hourly rate is very expensive, but they installed those fenders, so they know how to remove them. I said, I want you guys, I'm going to bring you the truck. I want you to rotate my tires. Like, just take the wheel with the tire. Don't dismount the tire. Just take the whole wheel and the tire and move them from left side to the right side, But you'll need to do the fenders, right? And they said, okay, we can do that. When do you need the truck? I said, Monday, midnight at the latest, okay? Because I said, Tuesday I'm loading. And today's Thursday, so that should give them enough time if they're busy with doing something with other trucks, right? And then I dropped the trailer, started driving, and I'm thinking, okay, what else I can do since the truck will be there? Maybe there's something else they can do. And I was thinking about this, the popping sound, like some people say, like a helicopter sound that comes from the engine sometimes. And if you look at my video that I did recently, like whenever I'm driving with a load, especially going uphill, it's like like a puffing sound. Like, to me, that sounds, if I would have heard this on my International with a Caterpillar, I would have thought there was exhaust leak, like the clamps on the turbo were leaking somewhere. But on this truck, I replaced all the clamps, because all the clamps were pretty tiny and weak from the factory, so I put on like much bigger ones with big spring, right? So I replaced all those with a 6 or 7 or 8 of them, and that sound still happens, And so I decided to ask him to do some diagnostic. Maybe there's like a seal is better than manifold, but this truck has been doing this from day one, so it's not something serious. Otherwise, I would have broke down a long time ago, right? But this has been ongoing, like an ongoing issue. I think it's just, I'm sorry to say, the quality of assembly for these newer trucks, because it's not, like T800 or W900, right? They've been doing them for a long time, so they know all the procedures. But these ones, I got it, like 1 year after it just came out, this T880. And like the plastic assembly here at the wheel is rattling. I even had to put a bungee cord in there, and I just think that they don't do with these trucks because mostly the sales guy told me that a lot of things on these trucks are installed by robots, like automatically, right? Whereas the T800, that's why you have to wait longer for them. When you order the truck, it takes long. The production time takes longer because there's more by the hand assembly. And I think that's actually, I was not sure how I feel about these robots assembling the truck, and now I know that I'd rather humans assembled. I think it's probably better quality. I don't know, but I think this sound that I hear, it's maybe just even the air intake is not connected fully in there, and I just hear that air that goes through the, because it's a single filter, right? And so there's these hoses on the sides inside the hood, and when you drop the hood, right, they all connect, and maybe the seal there is not like complete. It just can be something stupid, but it's like annoying to hear the sound where I would prefer to hear like the engine, like the power of the engine, but I don't hear that. And so that's what I asked him. I said, I want you guys to look into this. And I said, here's my YouTube channel. Just look at some of my videos where I'm driving, and you'll be able to hear it. Actually, I gave him one particular video, and I said, this is at this minute and second mark, that's where you can hear the sound. And the guy says, can you email me the video? He says, we cannot get access to YouTube from here. He says, we probably have firewall. I said, no, I cannot email you the video because the file is like 750 megabytes, Or can you cut out a small piece? I said, it's still going to be a big file. Plus, you don't even have speakers. I looked at his computer. You don't have speakers. I said, I'll give you the link. When you go home, I know you guys probably hate this, but when you go home, can you just look at it on your computer? But I played to him the file, and he was able to hear the sound. I said, this is the sound. This is what I'm referring to, I just got my computer, and I started my own internet on the phone, and I found that video, and I played to them. So I'm telling you, that's YouTube. I often use it just for myself, either to for like problem diagnostics, or even to look up a similar load to what I'm picking up next, just to see how I secured it. It's so great to have all these videos sitting there. It's like a big my own, or everybody's free library of knowledge, which sometimes comes very handy. And so that's what they're doing. I said, yeah, rotate the tires. You have to play with the fenders. They said, okay. I said, second thing, and they said, how many hours you want us to spend on this diagnostics for the puffing helicopter sound? I said, half an hour. And the girl says, that's probably not enough. 1 hour? I said, how much is the hourly rate now? She says, 160 an hour. 160. I said, what? What happened to 145 you guys had? And the girl says, well, I've been here 2 years. When I came on, it was already 160. 160 Canadian. So what is that? That's 70, 40, so 110 US, which probably you guys in the States would not be afraid of this number, but it's pretty high for Canada. 160 bucks. But anyway, I said, we don't want you guys to go broke, so I'll give you 2 hours. We love Kenworth, so we don't want Kenworth to go broke. I'll give you 2 hours for diagnostics. If you cannot pinpoint the problem within 2 hours, then you should just terminate your employment and go and do something else for a living, like maybe plant some vegetables or something, or boil eggs. I don't know. But I think 2 hours at 160 bucks an hour, it should be reasonable for an experienced mechanic. It should be a reasonable expectation for me, so that the experienced mechanic would find something, right? And I said, the truck is empty, right? The truck has no trailer, so that's why I brought you guys this video, because over here I'm under heavy load, driving on big hills, and it's much easier to hear the sound. And so the guy says, okay, I'll try to look at it at home again. But I did show him the video. So tires, puffing sound, and I said, okay, and one more thing, since you guys already have the truck and you have nothing to do pretty much. I see guys walking around the shop, doing nothing. Well, I was of course joking, but because they're always busy. But I said, since you already have my truck, why don't you do one more thing for me? I said, the hoses. I just wanted to install quick disconnect couplers on the hoses at the PTO tank. And the guy went with me. I showed him what I want, and so now he was not sure if they will get them in time, like from parts, these couplers. But I showed him the other side where the front of the hoses are, where I disconnected them from the trailer, and over there you can see that coupler, right? One hose has the female part, and the other hose had the male part, you know, like the big bolt and the nut, right? They go inside. And I said, that's what I want. Just install these on this side at the truck. And so I explained to him, I said, yeah, so, you know, this way, when I have to drop the trailer, instead of messing with these 100-foot long hoses, I can just disconnect them at the truck, you know, and just throw them on the trailer, and then disconnect my, you know, air and electrical, and be done. So it would save so much time, you know. And they said, okay, if we find these parts, we'll install them. So it should be a big deal. It's a rubber hose, right? I know some people would do it themselves, but I don't want to mess with it in this weather. I'm not a mechanic. And that also got me thinking about the Jeep, what I'm going to do with the Jeep. Because, of course, once the Jeep is connected, my hoses are going to be too short to reach the trailer. You know, like if I need to disconnect from the trailer, raise the height, drop the height. And so there's two choices here that I will have to decide on in December, probably. Either install a Honda motor on the gooseneck, but then I won't be able to use my PTO because they block these hoses from the truck. I know they say dual, but then you have to reconnect these couplers to the proper hoses, right, for the truck PTO to work. So that's not ideal. And plus, Honda, I had them on my Kaufman trailer, right, and I don't think they're very reliable, you know. I only had one issue with my PTO. It started leaking under the cab, but where the hoses were connected, and I just went to the shop. As long as you know where it's leaking, they can fix it, right? And they just, he says one coupler was not fully inserted somewhere there, and they recoupled it, put in a new one, and now it's perfect. So the only issue I have now is, for some reason, the light disappeared. You know, when I turned the PTO on, before I had the light on the dash light up and says PTO. Now I have nothing. And I, you know, sometimes before I would, when this started happening, I would put it in PTO mode, and I wasn't even sure, is it gonna work? But then I go out of, you know, I increase my RPM, I go to the trailer, everything works. It's just the light for some reason. Maybe the light burned out. Maybe I'll have it fixed next time. Maybe it's just the light, you know. And so yeah, and the second thing I can do on the Jeep is just install hoses, like the either metal or rubber hose on the Jeep itself with quick disconnect on both ends. You know, this way when I hook it up to the truck, I'll just hook up the truck hose to the Jeep, and then the end of the Jeep's hose to the trailer, you know. This way you don't have to deal with the Honda. Maybe I'll have to add some oil, because now you have, you know, 20 feet more of space where the oil has to travel. But we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But I'm very excited about this big coming change to my trucking operation, because I'll be able to run as a 9 or 10 axle rig. And the pusher axle on the truck will be very helpful if I move something through Georgia, because Georgia always wants one more axle as everybody else, you know, for the same weight. So let's say if I have 9 axles, so I can do, you know, 9 times 20, 180 gross. And Georgia would say for 180 you need 10 axles, you know, and that's when you can put that pusher down and go there, you know. But very excited about this Texas project. That machine will make for a great video. I just hope they don't break the trailer. Last time we loaded this, the guys did not know how to position it, and they drove that thing on and off 3 times from the trailer. And they have very big like the tracks, you know, those things on the tracks are very big, not like the excavator. They're much bigger. I forgot what they're called, but you know, those kind of like ribs on tracks, right? They're so, I don't know, 6 inches, you know. And at one point I think it even broke my one timber. I think, when they were loading, because there was too much, or maybe it was something else. Maybe I'm mixing it up with something. But anyway, so this time I'll make sure they check the height with it, because I'm picking up the machine together with the attachment, and that was the problem last time. They loaded, and then they realized it was too tall, and so they had to unload again, drive with those studs on my trailer, and then they had to unhook the part of the attachment and rehook it with a chain, so the overall height went down and I was legal. That's when I still had my drop side rail, and so they were doing a lot of damage to my deck, and so now I'll make sure they check the height before they do all this, and it has to be loaded backwards, because that big attachment will sit on the floor right after my gooseneck. And again, that's why it's helpful. I found these videos where I was loading this trencher, or drainage plow as it's called, and I can look at it and I can recollect the problems I ran into with that machine. I think that one was going to Ohio or Indiana. There was an agricultural trade show, and they were just shipping this machine there for trade purposes, like for the trade show participation, like a demo. So it's pretty much the same, except it's a different brand. I did not even know that so many brands of these machines exist, but so that's what I'm doing. So now I don't have a truck, so I have to stay at the hotel and finish my paperwork for IFTA in the third quarter, and then my truck should be ready Monday. I hope they will find the issue with the air noise, and then Tuesday morning we're gonna start trucking. Thanks for watching.